Exactly. Thank you, Taco, for introducing me. I see you have a similar taste in interior as well, so that's quite nice. I hope you enjoyed the interesting presentation about the findings of the Cool Times project as much as I did. Congratulations to Mr. Gideon. Now I will elaborate a little bit more on that other project that brings us together today, and that's the Nature Smart Cities project. So I will talk you through one of the main deliverables of our project, which is a business model. So as Taco said, my name is Wito van Oijstaeijen, and I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Antwerp. And we, as a university, were the lead partner for work package 1 of this project, that same and infamous business model. It is a little bit of a frightening term, isn't it? A business model. So at least it was to me the first time I'd heard it. So our generation solves this by a quick Google search, after which Investopedia learned me the following definition. So a business model is a high-level plan for profitably operating a business in a specific marketplace. A primary component of the business model is the value proposition. This is a description of the goods or services that a company offers and why they are desirable to customers or clients, ideally stated in a way that differentiates the product or service from its competitors. Well, this explains us a little bit how business models function within businesses and with often tradable goods and services. Many questions are left unanswered when considering green infrastructure or nature-based solutions or other publicly available goods or services. So there's a few characteristics that are specific to the context that we're observing, which is a business model for green infrastructure.
Vito, if you don't mind, sorry, I'm interrupting you for a second here. It seems that we cannot all see the slides that you are presenting. Is there something you can do about that to share your screen in a different way?
Well, in a different way. Let me try again.
Excellent.
Better?
Yeah, I can see
okay.
it.
So I'll get back to those characteristics that are specific to the context that we're observing. First, for whom? So who are we building a model for? Who will benefit from this business model? Secondly, profitability. Is this a reasonable desire for this target group? What goods or services are we trying to catch with our business model? What specific properties of this good or service are inextricably linked with its business model? And can we really speak of customers, and who would that be? So we try to answer these questions. I would say that for the Nature Smart Cities project, at least, our target group is local authorities. So we want local authorities to benefit from the business model that we will design. And moreover, we'd aim for a self-sustaining or sustainable investments rather than aiming for profitability per se. So sustainable investments in the goods that are part of green infrastructure installments and deliver us ecosystem services. Characteristics of our product, it's characterized by non-rivalry. So this means, for example, that if I consume the beauty of my local urban park, this does not lead to less consumable beauty for my neighbors tomorrow, for example. It's also characterized by non-excludability. I cannot exclude anyone from visiting that same park. It's open to the public, it's for everyone. So at the same time, GI is also characterized by multi-benefits. So we don't only have those recreational benefits, we also have other ecosystem services, water management, carbon sequestration, etc., etc. As a result of it being a public good, we could say that our customers are society as a whole. So if we would then go back to the definition that I proposed earlier, we can adapt some things. So a business model is a high-level plan for sustainably operating publicly available green infrastructure. A primary component of the business model is the value proposition. This is a description of a potential green infrastructure investment that a local authority offers and why it is desirable to the community at large, ideally stated in a way that differentiates the green infrastructure from traditional infrastructure. Great to have that out of the way. So I'm sure we now all agree on what a business model for green infrastructure should be. But why would we need it? Which gaps do we aim to fill with this business model? What we see is a hampering uptake of green infrastructure. This originates from various factors, of which I listed a few. First of all, it's not perceived as a credible alternative to gray infrastructure. There's always this uncertainty and risk connected to green infrastructure, which leaves us a little bit stuck in the status quo often. And there's limited resources for different projects within local authorities. So what is our aim with this business model? We want to take away as much as possible of these initial uncertainties, and we'll do this by facilitating local authorities to demonstrate the expected costs and benefits, and by providing an easily accessible framework that is widely applicable too. How do we get to the business model as we see it today? So firstly, we've reviewed a lot of existing literature. Less exciting probably, but we did it. This led to a few publications that can be found on our Nature Smart Cities website in the data library. Secondly, Phil Back from Imperial College has done a lot of semi-structured interviews with local authorities, but he's going to present later, so I'll leave that to him. He'll tell you everything about it after the coffee break. Then we aim to provide specific answers to local authorities' expectations and needs that we identified along the course of our many partner meetings and calls lately, unfortunately. And lastly, through executing valuation exercises on our Nature Smart Cities pilots ourselves, we've also learned a lot. So we have the inputs. Applying our business model thinking that was proposed in the beginning of my presentation, what will now concretely be delivered for local authorities to overcome existing barriers and challenge the status quo? First, we'll develop a step-by-step method that provides the scientific background and deliver examples and guide local authorities to make estimations of the impact of GI projects. We will deliver this in the form of an Excel sheet. Secondly, a guidance document for local authorities to successfully complete each of these set steps will be provided in order that local authorities can transparently draw the business case for their specific GI project. So what features will the business model have? It will provide arguments to justify investments. Local authorities will be able to transparently compose qualitative and quantitative arguments for a range of GI types. It will provide structure and visuals, structure through our step-by-step. It'll be a very clear and accessible method, and visuals will be provided by the outcome, a fact sheet template that allows local authorities to compose an intuitive and easily interpretable oversight of their investment. But I'll come back to that later. We'll provide an evidence base by combining previously composed databases on GI benefits, while also expanding this with new examples and including cost data. And this data is not just on green infrastructure. We want to foresee ballpark figures for gray alternatives in our guidance document as well, so that it becomes much easier for local authorities to compare green and gray. Then through our Nature Smart Cities program and events like the one we're attending today, we attempt to raise awareness. Through the case that can be formed with our business model, local authorities are guided to communicate to different stakeholder groups, thus increasing awareness. As I previously mentioned, it'll be a step-by-step method that local authorities need to walk through. So this does not mean that we will deliver an automated tool, but we'll provide all means to independently and successfully progress through the different steps. And yeah, hopefully, at least that's the objective, of course, it'll be practical and useful for local authorities. Coming to our concepts. So we feel that the business model should assist decision makers and provide them the handles to demonstrate how a GI project can generate returns. This evidence can be qualitatively, quantitatively, or monetarily expressed. and can be compared with the costs. The output can then be used to persuade stakeholders for the green infrastructure option, or at least provide arguments that justify certain investments. It will thus help to conceptualize an idea. Initially, there's a lot of uncertainty at the idea stage of a project, and with the business model, we want to take away some of these uncertainties and help conceptualize your idea. It should provide an initial oversight on how different criteria or ecosystem services will be influenced by implementing GI, and how different types of GI do so in different ways. And that's what we want to demonstrate a little bit with the funnel on the right as well. So the business model will take away some of the initial fuzz, and it will become very useful to kick off your GI project. Let's say that we hope that it will increase your chances of the GI project being accepted in a later stage. But it's not the purpose to take away all the uncertainties, of course, since predicting future is quite hard or impossible. At the core of our business model, we'll build a multi-criteria analysis. The reasons for choosing a multi-criteria analysis are diverse. First, green infrastructure is characterized by its multifunctionality. This is a huge asset, or this is supposed to be a huge asset, but sometimes it can introduce confusion as well. It can lead to the belief that it's less suited for a single purpose, for example. With the approach of the multi-criteria analysis, we want to overcome this confusion and turn it back into the asset it was in the first place. The NCA is a matrix, so apart from multiple criteria that can be defined, you can also adopt multiple spatial interpretations. Multiple spatial interpretations, that means that it will be easy to compare gray infrastructure with green infrastructure or hybrid solutions. The advantage of an MCA is that the assessment is flexible. According to the type of GI, the location of the project, the desires of the user, user can opt for different criteria to include in the assessment. And further, the MCA is very adaptable and responsive for users. For different stakeholder groups, for example, the user could choose for different criteria to highlight. Then another advantage is that we can combine qualitative and quantitative data, because as cliche as it sounds, the key to a good forecast is to not limit yourself to quantitative information. Now, lastly, the MCA works in various contexts, so it's accessible and transferable, and it is easily adaptable to the scale of the proposed projects. So local authorities could, for example, invest more resources for bigger projects, let's say. Next slide. Okay, so 3 important steps in our MCA approach. First, you select the criteria. So we're learning from our pilot cases, and we will compile a list of criteria that can be relevant to a decision-making process. And in the first phase of our analysis, it's up to the user of the tool to indicate which criteria are important to them. With criteria, criteria can be ecosystem services based, for example, water management, microclimate regulation, carbon sequestration, but it can also be additional criteria that are locally important. For example, if your mayor really values the amount of parking spaces in his village, that could also be a criteria. To give you an example, we move to one of our pilot cases examples. This is an example from Capelle in Zeeland. So to select criteria, we use a rapid assessment scheme. So we offer examples of possible criteria. In this case, it's all ecosystem services. And the initiator of the project scores the importance of these criteria on a 1 to 5 scale. In the case of Capelle, we can see, for example, that water management is extremely important to the project, and then other factors such as microclimate regulation, biodiversity, carbon sequestration, improvement of living environment, education and raising awareness prove important as well. So we ask our partner to provide a short description of what he interprets or she interprets with these ecosystem services or applied to their specific case. Now that we have our criteria, we go to the second dimension, which is defining different spatial scenarios. Again, the user is free to decide how far he or she would like to go in this. This can be expressed in simple words, or one could add sketches or pictures to make it more visual. And we always start from the situation as it is today. We call this the baseline scenario. We move again to our Capella case. So this is for the Capella case. We see three different scenarios. We have the status quo, we have the GI light, and the GI plus scenario. And yeah, a user is free to define as many scenarios as he or she would like. We already see that by describing these visually, that such as our colleagues from Capella did, that it already offers an insight in the changes that will be delivered. So moving from the baseline to the green light, for example, we see that there's more trees and some roads will become permeable. And then if we move to the green plus, we see more permeable pavements and we see more trees. Last step, in the last step, we combine those first two steps. So we assess the scenarios on those different criteria. This sounds a little vague, but that's why I added an example. So we won't go too much into detail into the exact assessments as we've made them, because it's still hard work in progress. But we mainly want to share the concept and share how it all will look and feel. So what we see here is a qualitative or part of the qualitative assessment of some of the ecosystem services that Capella indicated to be important. So they're all qualitatively scored relative to the baseline scenario. So for example, if you look at water management, we can see that for the green infrastructure plus scenario, that they get the maximum score. In our guidance document, we will provide the guidelines to make scoring less arbitrary. So that's just to give you a grasp of what it will look like. In the next step, the user then will proceed to the quantitative and monetary phases of the assessment through the general ballpark figures that we will provide and the guidance that goes with it. It'll be easy for local authorities to compute initial estimations for many of their upcoming projects. As I've said before, this is all work in progress, just to share the concept. But eventually the objective is that local authorities will receive intuitive data that they can use to convince their fellow decision makers to adopt project ideas. If we then would present the results, which is the most important part, let's say, we would go for the results would be visible in a fact sheet for which we will provide the template. So the fact sheet should be enhanced with readily understandable visuals, such as the spider diagram on the right. And the objective is to present this in a non-technical way. So where available, we will also include financial indicators, but we want to make it as tangible as possible, and that's why we aim for an outlook that's similar to the UK Energy Performance Certificate that you see on your left side. We're not there yet, but to show how this could work, we'll let you in our current work in Capella again. So we have made a very provisional fact sheet for Capella. This would look somewhat like this. So this is the first version, and then you can clearly see the implications of the gray scenario, very intuitively presented next to the green scenario. It's a combination of qualitative and quantitative evidence. So for example, some ecosystem services are better suited for quantitative assessment, for example, water management, microclimate regulation, carbon sequestration, compared to cultural ecosystem services, which are typically easier to express qualitatively. But we try to give a holistic view of the impact that can be realized through a project in a very intuitive way. So to summarize all of this, I'd like to go back to this definition that I started with. The the attentive viewers might have seen that there were 3 elements that were marked in bold. And these are the key aspects of a business model. So a high-level plan, second, value proposition, and stated in a way that differentiates from the competitors. If we apply this to our business model, it's a high-level plan, so no exact calculations, but we provide the structural differences between spatial scenarios in intuitive numbers, as well as visual support. The high-level plan is clearly depicted by the funnel that we've shown you before. Secondly, our value proposition. So through our MCA, we'll very carefully describe the value that specific GI investments add. On the pyramid on the right, you can see the flow of this evidence. So from the full range of ecosystem services, a large part can be described qualitatively. A smaller part lend themselves to a quantitative expression. And then in the end, what's left is a monetary valuation for a small subset of the initial bunch of services. So this is to illustrate that monetary valuations are just the tip of the iceberg. And with our business model, we really want to go beyond that. And then the third element, stated in a way that differentiates from competitors, so differentiates from gray or traditional infrastructure. This will do with our visuals, with intuitive communication through the fact sheet template. By clearly putting the costs and benefits of gray and green against each other and next to each other. It's very intuitive, and local authorities will be able to get a thorough understanding of the impact within the blink of an eye. Well, yeah, this is a small exaggeration, but short update on the timeline. So we're gradually progressing towards step 3, testing and validating our business model. We do this by applying or putting our other pilot cases to the test, and to compose the first draft of the business model by the end of June 2021. And then a final version is expected in 2022. And I guess it will be available for all local authorities through the National Smart Cities website. Well, this was it for me. That was my story. If you don't make Jacob's cut for the Q&A, please feel free to contact me. You see my email address below, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much for that, Wito. We have at least one question that is actually quite interesting, and maybe you could share your first thoughts with us about that. And it's basically about the general context of a business model like this one. So what would be the requirements for a local authority before they can actually start using it? Wouldn't they need to have some sort of an overarching general green infrastructure strategy or another type of plan as a starting point before they can start working with a model like this? And what would be these sort of minimum entry requirements?
Yeah, so that's an important point. We want to keep the model, as I said in the beginning, sounds a little bit delicate, but we want to make it as entry level as possible. So by providing a clear guidance document, we want to take all local authorities, or we want all local authorities to be able to be taken through this process of developing a business case for a small or for a GI project at least. So it's a really important element for us to keep it entry level, and we'll do this by providing as much guidance as we can.
So as such, basically, even the business model could be actually the first step rather than a second or third one in opting for solutions. That's basically what you are also pointing at.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks very much.
It's really to conceptualize, or you have an idea and put the idea somewhat more into practice and take away a lot of uncertainty in order for your decision maker to be more open, let's say, to what you're presenting them.
Right. Yes. Are there any particular tips and tricks that you have in mind to, let's say, persuade or encourage local authorities to move beyond pure monetary thinking about their investment decisions or their infrastructure decisions? Clearly, the model can help to come to the right decision, but how can you get them to start using it?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think there's an important role for our strategy within the Nature Smart Cities project to already in the validation phase try out our model on as many different cities and local authorities as possible in order that the concept is demonstrated as such. I believe that other local authorities are more inclined to use the model if someone else has used it. And that's key element, and it's one thing that Anna already pointed out in the beginning. We'd like to engage local authorities that are open for this idea, because we think it could benefit us both.
Right. So it's the story of the snowball. It starts small, and hopefully.
I guess so.
Grows by experience.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time since I've seen snow in Belgium, but.
Yeah, maybe that's an analogy that our children will no longer understand. But today,
we'll have to think of something else.
Can still relate to this. Thanks very much for this interesting explanation and an introduction to the business model. We'll keep our eyes peeled for the final product, Wito.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks very much.